I saw Hamnet earlier this year and it stuck with me. Whereas on my first viewing I thought the film was quite good, though a bit too cold, every time I've thought about it since, it was like the film diminished in my head. More cracks started to show, and it felt like the film's story hadn't fully added up despite how clearly it resolved its themes. I recently rewatched the film and strongly disliked it, so after the success of my previous Frankenstein video, I wanted to make a video explaining why I didn't like Hamnet. I'll preface this review by saying most of the technical elements of the film are near perfect. The cinematography is beautiful, the editing is amazing in a way where you barely notice the film flying by. Even on my recent rewatch, for how slow the film was, I never found myself too bored despite knowing what was going to happen. The acting is great too. Jessie Buckley is one of my favorite actresses working in Hollywood right now, and Paul Mescal is, fine. I don't have a strong opinion on him either way. They both do great with the material they're given. On to my actual criticisms. The first thing that jumped out at me was that for a film anchored around a single relationship, I don't think that relationship works at all. It feels like the film is trying to distance you from their connection as much as possible. Agnes and William are extremely difficult characters to care about and have almost no chemistry in most scenes. The first 15 minutes of the film is built to sell you their connection, and it entirely falls flat. Take the scene of their first meeting. They meet each other in a shed, share a couple remarks, Agnes asks his name, and then he says,
Tell me when we kiss.
then they kiss, and she does exactly that. Maybe I'm not keyed into how this could be romantic, because this comes off as creepy to me. There's even a close-up on each character that, to me, emphasizes how uncomfortable this moment is. Either way, in this scene, it feels like these characters have no romantic chemistry at all. It makes no sense when they kiss. It just doesn't work. At least, it doesn't bring whatever these characters are meant to be feeling to the audience in one of the most pivotal scenes of the movie. Agnes's behavior in these early scenes also felt inconsistent to me. In the scene of their meeting, she's totally enamored with him, even gets frustrated with her family for speaking ill of him, though in the scene after, when she sees him in the forest, she gets defensive.
Hello.
What are you doing here?
Brought you this?
What is it?
It's a new glove for your bird.
I have a glove.
Agnes. Agnes, wait.
I have no idea what you're meant to pick up about the character from this or what causes this change. Throughout the rest of the film, the relationship lacks warmth. Many of the scenes where they kiss, have sex, or try to show some kind of romantic connection are often shot in these mediums or long shots that put you far away from the romance. There's something so cold about it, even though it's meant to be the bedrock of the film. In scenes later on where they're raising their family, they act more like people who just happen to live together in the same house, rather than people who built a life together out of love for each other against their parents' wishes. There are ways to make this colder style work, although it demands a slower pace. In Evil Does Not Exist, another film about nature, Ryusuke Hamaguchi establishes many careful connections between characters who aren't totally interesting on their own. Some of them only show up for one or two scenes. How does he do this? By letting us breathe within the scene and showing us with small actions. We watch characters have non-plot essential conversations while driving. We watch their daily routines. We watch how characters do things for each other to build a connection and history that is felt by the audience. In one of the first scenes of the film, we see the main character, Takumi, working. At first he's chopping wood, then he's collecting water from a river. He then drops all of that because he's running late to pick up his daughter from school. He brings her home as they talk about their day, and they talk about nature too. All of these elements, of course, inform us about Takumi. He's a hardworking guy who cares about his daughter, though he's forgetful. While most of this is stuff that impacts the plot, it's also what makes Takumi a believable guy living in this world. Even then, a lot of what happens in the intro is non-essential. We find out later that he was collecting water for a local business, which fleshes out the world more than anything. He's also consistently late to pick up his daughter. The whole wood chopping part only exists to set the tone for the movie and to characterize another character later on, though it's still hard to describe as plot essential. They make Takumi's character feel bigger than the film in a movie that is shorter and slower than Hamnet. This is the stuff that builds a world and builds characters, though in Hamnet, there's some attempt at this. Characters try to do things for each other. Shakespeare buys or makes a glove for Agnes, but Agnes throws it away. This is meant to set up Agnes's connection to her mother and the bird, which ties in with everything else thematically. Yet it doesn't sell us on the relationship, which is the even bigger driving force of the film. While Hamnet has an efficient script in the way that it ties everything together to either Shakespeare or grief, it makes for a film that feels as if the characters only exist for that story, like a fable, and do not actually live beyond it, which is strange because these are real people. Let's look at these individual characters for a moment. We'll start with Shakespeare. I've seen many people praise Hamnet as having a more grounded approach to Shakespeare as a person, compared to the more reverent way that most movies cover famous people. Though, is that truly what's going on here? In the film, we see him drink heavily, get in trouble and yelling at his wife, being an absentee father, making his actors do lines again and again to the point of frustration, and there's a darkness hinted to in his personality that we don't get the full picture of. Shakespeare in this movie has almost no depth whatsoever, no character beyond just being a trope. The troubled artist, the disturbed genius. I'm glad they didn't try to answer for Shakespeare's inner darkness, considering that he's a real guy after all. There's certainly more you can do with him than rehashing the same ways every movie portrays a misunderstood artistic male genius. Agnes's character isn't much more well defined. She has a reputation, status, and specific family role. She sees things, which affects the plot and themes. Personality-wise, she doesn't do much. She acts like how any person would reasonably react given her circumstances. Given that she's a woman in Shakespearean times, that makes it a lot more difficult to have her do things because of, society, though she still feels so passive. Her and Shakespeare don't meaningfully conflict in a way that tells you anything about either of them. You see them argue twice in the film, and each time it's like this limp non-argument where everything has already been resolved. I do like that she doesn't know proper play etiquette. I think that's a cute detail that brings a lot of life to the film, even though it's just there to contextualize the ending. So, neither of these characters have very much going on besides their literal plot functions, and do not express themselves very much or to each other, aside from a couple key scenes. As a result, the characters feel very cold and like I can't emotionally reach out to them or relate to them. Next, I wanted to broaden my look at the film and how it uses Shakespeare's work. I like to disclaim that this next section is based on my own reading of Hamlet, which I did in high school. I did reread it for this video, but I wanted to clarify that I'm not some huge Hamlet knower. I do adore it. It's one of my favorite things that I read in class, and it's stuck with me every day, but most people's perception of Hamlet is going to be informed by a classroom setting with presumably the same sorts of interpretations as seen in my class, so the movie inherently is going to be seen through that lens in the public consciousness anyways. I'm not trying to pull some insane interpretation of Hamlet, then wonder why the film doesn't cater to me specifically. That is to say, the last point that truly sunk this film to me is that it's so attached to Shakespeare's legacy, though it's so fundamentally uninterested in engaging with Shakespeare beyond the most hollow and broadest references. Many scenes throughout the film directly reference dialogue from his plays, with the implication that this stretch of his life is what inspired him to not only make Hamlet, but Macbeth too. The film's ending posits that Hamlet was an attempt by Shakespeare to process his own grief for his son. The play allows him to bring his son back to life for a short period of time to finally talk to him and allow him to do the things that he could never do, all while trying to express with the filmmaking itself how art can allow people to capture the dead and allow us to process emotions personally, both as an artist and an audience. And as the film presents it, this makes sense, but when thinking about Hamlet in a more general context, this entire narrative falls apart. Now listen, while I'm sure it's no coincidence that Shakespeare named Hamlet after his late son, I think the way the movie makes connections to the play fundamentally misunderstands it. Hamlet is not a play where you're meant to only feel invested in Hamlet of Denmark. That's reductive to the scope of what Shakespeare is doing. Rather, it's a play that places the audience as more of an objective observer, watching how all these characters' actions affect each other like a big game of dominoes. At the end of Hamlet, when everybody dies, I am a bit sad, though mostly excited and satisfied in watching all of these pieces come together. Yes, of course you're meant to care, in a certain detached way. It's a cerebral enjoyment, not a purely emotional one. Not to say that something that's more cerebral is better than something that's more emotional. I'm just pointing out a difference in how it's meant to be enjoyed. To add to this, consider that Hamlet the play is thought to be representing the moral decay of Denmark at that time. Why you would represent your son as the center and driving force of that moral decay is beyond me. I'm sure the book, the author, or Chloé Zhao could all give me some more in-depth answer to everything I've said here, though you can't have Hamnet the movie end with some long scene where someone explains to Jessie Buckley exactly how these two perspectives on Hamlet work together actually. I'm sure there's some way that they do, though to me they seem totally opposed to each other and are actively working against each other. It's not just a different way to look at Hamlet, it narrows its views down to a specific interpretation that cuts out many important pieces of the play and doesn't hold up once you start thinking about the play as a whole. The movie doesn't hold up either when you think about it as a contained narrative about these characters because they're not fleshed out enough, which begs the question, why was I still so moved by the ending? That's not to say every big emotional swing this film does works for me. While I don't think I was as taken by it as most people, I think the film has certain raw qualities that pull emotion out of the viewer. I don't think it's aided by the filmmaking though. The birth scene is a perfect example of this. Due to the fact that I'm a human person with empathy, when Jessie Buckley screams at the top of her lungs and is mistreated by everyone around her, I feel bad. Though I think that's just the raw ability of her performance. I don't think there's anything about the filmmaking adding to this sense of unease. To echo what I said before, the film consistently takes a detached and more objective perspective on all of this suffering suffering without letting us into these characters emotionally. The ending worked for me the first time though. The film wraps up all of its surrealist visual imagery in a neat bow to make its main thematic points about how art, making it engaging with it, can help people process emotions such as grief. It can help people do and see things that aren't possible and help us communicate with the dead. I think this is a true observation, I agree with it, and I fundamentally resonate with it, even if it's one I've seen done better in other places. I just wish it was better, because it feels like every decision made in telling this story is trying to impede this moment of emotional connection, rather than push it somewhere transcendent. Thanks for watching.